Welcome to All the Things They Don't Want You to Talk About podcast. This podcast will explore all the subjects that make the insecure squirm in their seats. Religion, politics, local and national, the Constitution of the United States, the wheel of love and hate, and mental illness, to just name a few. Stay with us as we use our freedom of speech to delve into the good and the bad. If this podcast is not for you, feel free to find another one. Without any further ado, here comes all the things they don't want you to talk about. Welcome to all the things that they don't want you to talk about. And this is going to be a podcast series that's going to talk about a lot of things that a lot of people don't talk about. And this week, for this podcast, we're going to be talking about the future of lifeguards in South Haven. And I've got a great panel here today. We got Scott T., who's normally part of the Rob Byrd's Moondog Show. Amanda Jones, who's normally part of the Rob Byrd's Moondog Show. And new to the studio and coming in is Jim Horan, who is a business manager and a lifetime resident of South Haven. And one person that I've known for a long time, and I think he's got a very level head and a lot of great ideas. And I think that he will do well in talking in these conversations. So welcome, Jim.
Welcome, Jim.
Yes, and
it's a pleasure.
Okay, there he is. He has a voice. I wasn't sure for a moment. And of course, Heather Johnson from S.H.A.P.E is in, she is the leader of S.H.A.P.E and has been heading a massive effort to put lifeguards in South Haven. And of course, in a lot of ways, some agree with it, some don't. There's a lot of discussion about it. There's a lot of things nobody knows about with what's going on with the fight for lifeguards, and that's why we're doing this, and that's why she's here. So welcome, Heather.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and of course a good friend of mine, Sam Kester King. Everybody knows Trish, I'm sure, around town, and she's here in the studio. I don't know how much she's going to say, but she's here as moral support for Heather, and she'll chip in here and there. So good morning to you, Sam.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Why is your mic so far? Oh, I didn't turn you on. Say that again.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
There you go. Technical issues already.
He did that just to see how you react.
Just to see what I do.
See what she'd do.
Well, we thought maybe she didn't need a mic.
Well, she didn't. I've heard Sam when she's not happy before, and she didn't need a mic that day.
We all get that way. It's okay.
Yeah. And and what we're here for is not to bash anybody, not to bash any things they're doing. We're trying to find ways and talk about maybe some compromises. There's big discrepancies with what the city says it will cost with the report that Heather made, and there's a huge gap in what the city says that it will cost for this and what S.H.A.P.E says. And so we want to talk about that and maybe find some ways to get to maybe a more of a middle ground on that. Find some ways and kick around some ideas about how this could get paid for, because there certainly are ways that could be utilized to pay for something like this. So I guess to start it all out, Heather, how long have you been working on this effort to bring lifeguards to South Haven?
So really quickly, I think there's like a misconception with S.H.A.P.E and with me as an individual. So S.H.A.P.E is not advocating for lifeguards because there is a clause for nonprofits that we cannot be lobbying politicians for any cause.
Okay.
So I cannot, under S.H.A.P.E, be lobbying city council members for lifeguards. Me as an individual, apart from S.H.A.P.E, can. And that's where I think some misconception with S.H.A.P.E and with me is coming from within the community. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to kind of get
quite
that
easily too, by the way.
Yeah, especially if I'm the face of S.H.A.P.E. It's very easy to get misconstrued with that. So with S.H.A.P.E though, I was out on the beach and I did see a lot of things that a lifeguard would prevent.
Sure.
And so with that, I really was intentional to never get tied into the lifeguard argument within the first year, because I didn't want that stigma. And I also know that there's a polarizing aspect to lifeguards here in South Haven. And I didn't want my organization to suffer because of that polarization and that stigma around lifeguards. So I really tried really hard to stay Switzerland and play really nicely and really kindly with that fine line of not touching the lifeguard argument. Once I was out on the beach that entire year and I saw everything that I saw and I was getting reports reports back from my ambassadors of what they were seeing and experiencing, I'm like, yeah, we have to do something. We have to put lifeguards on this beach. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They need to have immediate eyes on the water, because there's a lot of bystanders that are saving lives out there that should not be. And then we call those ripple effects. So it's affecting those people that are helping the people that are in distress. Even if it's not a water emergency, let's say they're on a float and they're caught in a longshore current and there's somebody that sees that and goes in and helps them. That story is going to always stick with them. And that's what we call a ripple effect. So those ripple effects are really affecting a lot of people. And that affects mental health. We already have a mental health crisis in this country, and we need to make sure that we're protecting people's mental health above all else. And I'm a huge advocate for mental health. So that's the connection that I made. And so with that, I, as a personal individual, apart from S.H.A.P.E, made the decision, okay, I am going to advocate for S.H.A.P.E, but I will not put anything for, or advocate for lifeguards, but I'm not going to advocate for that on S.H.A.P.E.'s Facebook page, on our website, or anything like that. I'm going to keep those two things completely separate so my organization does not suffer, because I don't want cancel culture to come in and take my organization that I worked really hard to build.
It would be a shame.
We're certainly there that if you do something or say something that someone doesn't like, all of a sudden it's time to get rid of you. So that's certainly an issue. But one of the things I do want to say about everybody in this room, we all love South Haven. This is our home. We love it here, and we want it to be a place. And if we're going to be a tourist destination, we want to be a place that when they come to, it's welcoming and nice for them. Now, I mean, I have heard all kinds of different arguments, and I've even heard people say, I mean, as bluntly as, why would the city pay for this when everybody on the beach, they're tourists, they're not from here? Why are we worried about them? Why should we protect those that come to South Haven? And why is it the city's responsibility to do so if something does happen and people decide to sue the city and not take that personal responsibility for themselves?
Yeah, and my thought process on that is that there's a really big stigma that it's non-locals that are drowning. There's been a study done by Greg Field, and he found that 80% of the drownings in the Great Lakes, in all 5 Great Lakes, are actually Michiganders. So if that's the case, then why aren't we doing something to protect our own?
But that doesn't seem to jive with our lived experience. You know, being from here all our lives, we have not seen many, I know there has been locals that have drowned in the lake, but not many that we see about, a few years ago when we had the high water and we had all the drowning, and that was an epidemic up and down the lake shores all over Michigan. And this is probably where a lot of this is stemming from, so it's another 30 years until we get to those conditions. So, but even then I said, because that happened in the 80s, and we did not, as a city, prepare for when it was going to happen again. And we had lots of issues because of it. So now we're in a spot where, okay, the water isn't as bad. Still our drownings, are still our water safety issues, but not as many. So we still have to be prepared for the future. And this is really what it's about, because lifeguards in South Haven, at the pace that city government moves is not going to happen this year. So now we're in a place where we're working to try to get this done for next. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I think we all know city government works slowly. You have meetings a month later, you talk about it a month later, and then it's a month later. Next thing you know, it's a year later, and you really haven't moved at all. So how can we do this? I don't normally, I'm not going to call anybody out on that one. Put all your phones to stun. and that is a good thing too, because here we are, we get to have a little laughter here, because this is a serious matter, but we want to keep it light, and obviously we've got a little help with that with cell phones. So so it kind of back to it, like we were saying, is you were on the point of most 80% of drownings in Michigan were from actual Michiganders. And let me tell you a quick story. I used to do a lot of snowmobiling out west, and avalanche dangers was always a big thing. So the problem with that is there's a lot of people from here, Michigan, and the East Coast that don't have mountains going out there and snowmobiling. Those people get educated about the avalanche, and most of the avalanche people that get caught in them are locals who snowmobile in it day in and day out. So that kind of correlates, at least with that lived story of mine that I know about with that. It still doesn't seem it seems weird because our lived experience is we don't have many locals drowning.
Well, and not only that, to add on to that point, though, when I first started the organization and I was talking to my friends about it and what I was doing, there were a number of them that were like, I'm so glad that you're doing this because this is my experience out on the lake. They may not have drowned, but they were in water emergency situations. Sure. There's one off of the power plant. I know everybody in South Haven has probably swam out by the power plant. Oh, yeah. That current that comes out of that tube.
With a three-eyed fish.
Yep. And the current that comes out of that tube, though, I mean, people get caught in that all the time. And a friend of mine got caught in that. And another friend that was swimming with her ended up having to save her. There's another friend that got caught in a rip current, and their friends that they were swimming with helped them get out of it. It may not be that they're actually drowning. The problem is that they are having water emergencies that a lifeguard should be there in order to help them get out of it. And it's a simple accident. It's not something that, you should have known better, or self-awareness and self-accountability. It's you are in a situation where you accidentally got caught in a current, and somebody needs to be there that knows that and can spot that immediately in order to save your life.
Yeah.
So is panicking, obviously, is that really where it starts going downhill real fast?
Really fast.
Your first gulp of water.
Yep, that's exactly right. Panic is the first stage to drowning. And so if you can mitigate that panic by taking a couple quick breaths without taking in water to calm yourself down, flip over on your back and just try to calm down. That's all you have to do. And if you can do that, then you're more likely to save your life than if you didn't.
That's good to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why we always say flip, float, and follow. Is because if you flip over on your back, it gives you time to mitigate that panic.
And that'll bring me back to just the snowmobile thing one more time, because I did a TV show for many years and we put this ad in every show. It was about going, because people, when you snowmobile, a lot of times you'll cross rivers, you cross water, and people sometimes snowmobiles will go in. And the whole thing about it was, is if you do get submerged, you have to stop. You have to catch your breath. You have to get it, because that's the killer. It's that first thing when you go into cold water or whatever. It's like,
yep.
And if you take a gulp of water at the same time, your chances of not surviving it have now gone way up.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to educate folks out when we're out on the beach and we're passing out these brochures and stuff. That's what we're talking to them about.
So I'll say, at least as far in this room, everybody would say that I would agree that lifeguards are certainly could be a good thing for us.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
And within having that, of course, you have to pay for it. South Haven has, I think it's 7 beaches, right?
Yeah.
It's got the north, the south, the Oak Street Beach. It's got the Dykeman Beach. It's got whatever one ends
Packard
right on
Park.
Packard Park.
Newcomb Beach.
Newcomb Beach. And
Pilgrim Haven, Deer Lick.
Yeah. So there's all these beaches. So now within that, do all of those beaches are now going to need a lifeguard? Because maybe down at Pilgrim Haven, it might need 1. The South Beach may need 4. The North Beach may need 4. That's a lot of lifeguards. Back in the day when we were there's 1 station on the South Beach, 1 station on the North Beach, covered it all. But really, in a drowning situation, it's seconds matter. And if one guy's in the middle of the beach and this drowning is happening at the pier, that's a long ways for that lifeguard to go.
Yep.
So obviously we have to have a lot. And then it's the hours. Do they start at 9 and go till 5, or do you do a smaller thing, 11 to 4 or something like that? There's a lot of hours, a lot of people. People cost a lot of money. Administration costs a lot of money, especially through city government. Where was your proposal on how much lifeguards and how many lifeguards would there be? Kind of give us the nutshell of what that proposal was about to be able to make our beaches safer.
Yeah, we had 14 proposed lifeguards. We had 4 stands on South Beach, 3 stands on North Beach. There were no stands proposed for any of the other 7 beaches. It was mainly to focus on those beaches that are directly in connection with the piers.
Okay.
We, statistically, if you look at the drowning statistics that Brandon Hins has over at S.H.A.P.E, there have not been any drownings off of any of the other beaches, just North and South.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that North and South are the ones that are covered because of those dangerous currents that happen with those
the most
piers.
populated.
They are. Yep. They're always going to be the most populated as well. So we want to make sure that those are covered. Our budget proposal was for $200,000. It covered administration. It covered head guards. It covered beach supervisor. It covered 14 guards. It showed what their training would be. It showed what their rotation would be, how many guards would be on at a certain time, what those times would be, what their shifts would be like. We gave them everything in the lifeguard proposal that we presented at City Council.
Okay. And your proposal being at 200, I don't know the exact number, but I think there was a proposal made, not a proposal, but a report made by Kate Hosier, I think it was Kate, about what the city thought that it would take to cover and administrative and all that. And the number was in the 600,000s, was it not?
700,000.
700,000. So between your proposal and theirs and what they're talking about, it's $500,000. To me, were in their proposal, were they proposing a lifeguard for every beach, or was it just the same ones, north and south?
Yes.
Okay. So where does a $500,000 discrepancy come from?
A $75,000 truck to go between beaches when they can just utilize an ATV, just like the beach enforcement officers do. $16 whistle with a lanyard for each lifeguard. There's no such thing. You can get a lifeguard whistle. Sam knows she does lifeguarding every day. Those whistles are only $5.
I'll donate the lifeguards up right now.
There you go.
Yeah, the whistles,
I'll donate the whistles.
Yeah.
If it's $200-$300 to get everybody whistles that they need, I'm on it.
Yeah, and then I think that the other costs, what they're looking at is maybe administration, maybe like HR, compensation for that. It's talking about benefits packages, that kind of thing. We didn't include benefits packages into our proposal.
Okay, for all the lifeguards?
For all the lifeguards, for the head guard, beach
benefit packages to part-timers that work for 3 months?
No, you don't.
Okay.
No, because that's ridiculous. They're in for a season and then they leave for a season.
Pay them well.
Pay them well, yeah. As long as you're paying them well, then they can go and get those privatized things.
Yeah, and my guess is most of those people that would be doing a part-time job, I'm thinking teachers. Those are the people that are off for the year that can do something like that, and they certainly have the time to, especially with South Haven, the pool. Maybe that's a great place to start with getting them in and getting them trained to be on the beach.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, with the way that we proposed everything, it's structured like a business. You have to structure this like a business and you have to build it like a business. You don't just go into starting a program without a 3 to 5 year business plan. Well, you do not do that.
City government doesn't understand. Most people in city government don't understand business. They're politicians and come from regular jobs. The
master plan.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I certainly don't see a lot of business savvy there, and I think that's that's just not something that most politicians do have. Of course, there are some, and I don't want to say that there aren't any, but so I guess what I'm trying to understand is, with such a big discrepancy, how have we not been able to kind of get together and find a closer middle ground on that? Well,
the city really hasn't invited us in. They invited me to do the lifeguard presentation, but then thereafter, it's like it's a closed door session all the time. I'm not invited in to consult with them on how we can come to a middle ground on those budgets, or if they're even looking at that. I don't know, because I'm a private citizen. I don't have the credibility or the title or a job with the city for them to be talking to me. So even me going in and doing the lifeguard presentation, they thought was absolutely taboo because I am not an expert. I never claimed to be an expert. I rely on the experts that I have in my network in order to build the lifeguard presentation.
People become experts on stuff all the time by reading other experts' research and information.
Exactly. And it takes, I think it was like 180 minutes.
That's how all of our scholars have learned.
Yeah. 18 minutes a day, 365 days out of the year will make you an expert on any topic.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I've done well over that, but I do not ever claim to be an expert because I'm just not.
Yeah. So has any of this been brought up to say maybe a privatization and contract to the city? Have any studies on that been done?
Any studies on? Yeah, it's in discussion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because I'm going back to my city council days, and when some events were happening and I'm sitting there going, okay, this is happening. What if we did our own, like had our own, contracted
a private
thing,
company,
a private company.
To the city.
And the funny part was the private company for our own entity to operate was charging the city $600,000 a year. for a private company to come in for that same thing was half of it at $300,000 a year.
Yeah, and the city's actually asked for that. Even at the lifeguard presentation, when I presented this to them, they asked us if Heather knows of a really great organization that we can contract with, we will be happy to look at that. That came straight from Kim Weiss. It also has come from Kate Hosier. So I do believe that they are looking for a contracted entity rather than building this entire program on their own, even though we started that process for them and handed that over to them. They can then take that and build on it. But they don't want to do that. It's going to take a lot of time and resources. And I get that. And I understand that. And I offered that even. I was like, maybe I just need to build one and take that all on myself. But I'm one person.
Well, you're already running the risk, though, of doing all this work for them just to say, oh, that's nice, and walk away.
Thank you for all your work, because but we really don't care.
As somebody
not saying that that's what they're saying.
Right.
I'm just saying, but that's the feeling you get.
That is
what
exactly
it feels like,
how
because
I feel.
reading the paper with everything going on, it's like we had you on and you said your budget stuff, and then when I read in the paper they said $600,000. It's like, whoa, where did this come from? So it's just kind of weird. I really thought that they were implementing some of the information that you gathered.
So that's just it. You can tell that based on that budget plan that there was not professional opinion in there. They had noted that we needed 11 AEDs in that budget plan. That's insinuating that you need an AED at every stand and then some. AEDs are not a fix-all solution to any kind of cardiac issues.
Sure.
Truthfully, you really only need one AED per beach, if that. And realistically, with lifeguards on the beaches, they're your first responders. So they'll be the ones pulling them out of the water. By the time we pull somebody out of the water and EMS arrives to take over, EMS is going to have a manual defibrillator in the back of the bus. So truthfully, it could be debated that we don't even need AEDs on the beaches.
Well, let me just ask one question about AEDs, because they're electronic.
Automated external defibrillators.
Now, if you pull someone out of the lake that is wet, I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying that maybe
no
it's a dumb
visible
question.
moisture is the whole thing. So obviously, let's say for women, obviously men, you swim in swim trunks. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be bare on the top half of their body. If we were to pull a woman out of the water and remove her swimsuit to apply those AEDs, the best thing that we can do is dry their chest, make sure that there's no visible moisture there, and then apply those AED pads. Obviously, they're still going to be dripping from their hair or where else there's a swimsuit and water pooling, but no visible moisture on the chest.
Yeah, so that's really, they need to have a whole different training that they're for that, because one little mistake and you just electrocuted somebody.
But part of the lifeguard training is the use of an AED.
Okay.
So they will have that. I actually went to Sam's class, what was it, last weekend or the weekend before?
Yep.
And I actually watched them perform that, where they asked for a towel. So they're delegating out roles to the other people that are around them that are helping with this rescue. And they actually delegate somebody with a towel to dry off the chest before they're putting those pads on. And I thought that was pretty neat to watch, you know.
Okay. Yeah. Jim Horan, you've been sitting over there so quietly.
I'm learning. It's very, very interesting. Is there a way that we can compare your cost against the city's cost line item? And
Absolutely.
I mean, I know they've got a lot of startup in there, and I don't know what you have in yours. I haven't really looked at it closely, but you know, liability insurance, those kind of things that are, you know, really huge costs that you can't get your hands around unless you really get a professional in there. Is there a way to look at the two programs to side by side and try to have a better place to start?
You know, their proposal was in the 11 pages of what we call the letter that I was not given before my presentation. I ended up having to find it. Somebody sent it to me that was not on council, that was not within city staff. So I ended up last minute had to read through all of their rebuttals on my presentation. And I mean, we war roomed my presentation to the point where we went through it comb by comb and made sure, because we knew they were going to do that.
Sure.
You know,
so this is right before you gave your presentation?
The Friday before the Monday.
Friday before my presentation on Monday.
It's about sales. If you've ever done sales in your life, the one thing about sales is this: you have to overcome every objection before you make a sale.
Yes.
Right.
And that sounds like where they want to be. Objection, 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 objection. So then you go to work at feeding all and doing those objections and overcoming those. And then when they do and you still get a no, then we'll really know what's going on. So just keep working on those objections and finding a way to get around them. And once that happens, it's really hard to say no.
Yeah, and what that did for us is it showed us what they really want, because they were so hush-hush about what they really want. We were all asking them, tell us what you want, and we will build it for you.
I bet you they didn't know.
What do you want? Yeah, and
they didn't know what
wouldn't.
They wanted.
Yeah, no, and they wouldn't tell us. It wasn't until I proposed what I proposed that they then came back, and now we know what they want. So now we know what those objections are in order to be able to work on them, which is great. I would love to collaborate with the city on that and get it done, but I feel like I'm being kind of outed because I'm pro lifeguard and I'm kind of associated with the people who are pro lifeguard, which is great. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. That's what I feel my calling is for S.H.A.P.E. My purpose is for S.H.A.P.E. and for the educational piece of it. But my personal preference is for the lifeguards to be out there.
Well,
so I'm fighting for it as hard as I can.
Let me say this. I heard this opinion the other day, and I think it was on a news story. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but the guy made the point that if you're going to have pay for parking, that the people that come down there should really expect a very high level of safety. If you're going to pay to go down there and park and have to spend that money to do it, which I think is $10 right now, I think it can certainly be a little bit more to help pay for some of these things. And everybody who's coming in here, most of them are tourists that go down to the beach, and they're used to paying high prices in Chicago and Illinois and everywhere else and actually at $20 to park for the day in South Haven is nothing to them. Now, if it was to make locals pay $20, it would be it's a little different story. But the folks that come here to spend their money, $20, another $10 a day is not going to hurt them. I
agree. And in our proposal, we actually asked to increase it by $5 to $10. So $15 to $20, that would cover the lifeguarding program at $200,000 and then some. So if once it grows and it does then start to offer benefits packages and things like that, then all of that revenue can then go to help supplement for that. But you're growing a business, and in that 3 to 5 year plan, you have to structure it to be able to offer those things. And not only that, but they did just raise the cost of the parking sticker. So if you go into City Hall and you ask to buy a parking sticker for free parking all summer long down at the beaches, they've raised that rate. So if you can do it for the parking sticker, why can't you do it for each parking spot?
Right.
In order to be able to cover those costs.
Yeah.
Is there a way we could share those costs so that people could see your proposed cost and your proposed startup and the city's proposed cost and their startup, and try to start seeing if we can't tear it apart a little bit on both of them to look at how those numbers can mesh together so that people have a better understanding.
Yeah, it's all public knowledge.
Before you answer that with Jim's, what I kind of have a tough time with is, go ahead and answer Jim's. I'm going to formulate my thought on that.
So it's all publicly in the agenda packet from that week's City Council meeting. So you can find that on the city website. And my proposal, they actually put in the agenda. So all of my slides, all of our proposed budget information, our proposed lifeguarding program, all of that information is within that agenda packet. And then their 11 pages and what they claim to be their budget is within those 11 pages after my presentation. Yes. So all of it's together.
Does the budget that you've put out, you can talk out loud, because we hear whispering and people are like, what's going on over there? Yeah.
So I was just telling Heather that our original budget that the city actually saw, there were some discrepancies that were in there in regards to training. So there was first aid, CPR, AED training, and lifeguard training were 2 different items on our original budget.
Okay.
So we needed to circle back because in the lifeguard training, first aid, CPR, AED training is a part of the lifeguard class itself. So that actually took monies and put it back away from that budget that we had accounted for. Another discrepancy I'd like to bring up about the city's budget is they had planned for 32 lifeguards, and they based that off of contacting New Buffalo, and New Buffalo had told them that they have 12 lifeguards on duty.
Isn't New Buffalo a lot bigger than we are?
Their beach is smaller than ours.
Yeah.
So when whoever contacted New Buffalo and had asked them questions, New Buffalo told them that they employ 12 lifeguards, and that was perceived to be 12 lifeguards on duty at all times. That was 12 employees for the entire summer. So that number obviously got fluffed up to implement in South Haven. And it's, well, as we said, we went and we marked out where stands should be. We took a rangefinder and did everything based on a zone of surveillance. You know, our lifeguard can only respond to something so fast, so it needs to be, you know, a certain parameter. So we went and marked all that out, and that's how we found seven stands, 4 on South Beach, 3 on North Beach. So needless to say, that budget that came from the city was, there was a huge lack of research there.
And not only that, but back to what she was saying about the equipment and stuff, we actually talked to Waterman. Dave Benjamin from Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project reached out to Waterman and got us an actual budget from them, or a quote basically of lifeguard equipment that we would need for the startup information. So that was also included in our proposal.
Now, back to New Buffalo. I don't know if this is a city, but isn't that the city that just started with 1 lifeguard, or was that St. Joe?
It was.
It was. They just started with 1 lifeguard, and it built from there.
And
very similar to S.H.A.P.E. And she started as herself, walking the beach, educating people, and then slowly incorporated more and got more employees and grew it into the program it is today.
And that leads, sorry, Amanda, that leads into my question. Is your budget a multifaceted, this year is this year we add this year we add this? Because to me it sounds like, and like I said, I haven't seen the city's budget, it sounds like their budget is, boom, right now, this is what we have to spend to make it happen now. Not a build of, you know, until we get to that point where we are spending $700,000.
Right.
That
I
was
was
the
so
biggest
excited.
just like the city's 5-year master plan. Maybe we should have a lifeguard master plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Heather wanted to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had actually proposed in the lifeguard proposal presentation that I came to City Council with phases. So there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and it goes by year. So you have year 1 to year 3 to year 5. So you actually have a full rounded business plan going into this to understand. And I call it a business plan because that's what my mind associates it with.
You have to.
You have to do it. That you have to think about it that way in order to build it into a successtal program. And a well-rounded one that incorporates everything that a lifeguarding program is going to need. And I mean, I talked to so many experts. There's a guy that runs a beach out in Newport Beach in California, and he's ran it for over 40 plus years. He's got so much experience. And so I went through my proposal with him word for word, line by line, and dug it apart. And he came back and he goes, this is amazing. This is amazing that you're even doing this as just a sole human individual without any agenda whatsoever. You just want to give them the information.
Sure. And what I'm going to have to ask here is, I mean, this would be so nice if we had a city official here. I did make a statement. And as things go on, I'm always going to make them publicly to them because I want every invitation to be public that the public knows about. Nothing that we want to do here is we have the doors closed, but we're not behind closed doors. When this is all said and done and we've talked about this, it's going to be for everybody to listen to. That's how it is. I want to have a show that will help with discourse. And I even had a conversation. I was part of a conversation with the mayor the other day, and I said, you know, we don't always agree with things idealistically, but if we don't ever talk about it, nothing's going to get better. And she said, on the whole, you're absolutely right. Now, will she come? I don't know. I have no idea. She is always invited. There's always, I will put out when we're going to be recording them for local politics stuff. And if the city wants to send a representative over, that would be great. But what we're doing here is trying to bat around the ideas that will make the public sector and the private sector here in South Haven be able to work a little bit better and come up with ideas that they don't get while they're surrounded in a big, huge meeting room with all the cameras on them, with people yelling and bitching at them and everybody getting up. It's really, really hard to formulate thoughts, and it's hard to get anything done. And that's why it's month to month and nothing happens over the course of city government.
And to piggyback off of that is when you're in City Council and you go up to the podium and you're public hearing or public comment on things on the agenda, and then you have public comment on things not on the agenda. People get really confused on how or when they're supposed to get up there and talk and that kind of a thing. But city council members are not allowed to talk back to you. It is not a full conversation. It is you
It's not
get
a
up.
conversation at all.
When?
It's not a conversation at all. They don't talk back to you at all.
Is it
They
fear
go,
or is
thank
it
you,
a fear
and then
or
you
a
sit
rule?
down.
Okay,
I don't
well,
know. I don't know if
you
it's a
know,
rule. I don't know if that's what they've been
I'm going
told.
back to my city council days, and we were able to ask questions and times like that. So I'm kind
Because that's what it's
Well,
about.
they'll
is it not?
ask questions sometimes, but there's a lot of the time that they all just sit there very, very quietly.
Very stoically
They won't
and listen.
say anything.
You have to realize. Well, I can't say it.
Well,
so.
they're very quick to tell you
I
if
can, but I can't.
Yeah,
what I've found is they're very quick to tell you you spoke at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, that was during the meeting. You should have spoke sooner.
Yes, that's
or that's during the that's not on the agenda. You need to speak
how
later.
the meeting's being run.
You didn't say it at the right time, so anything you say is moot.
Right,
and that's
right.
primarily the people are being misled because how the meeting's being run.
Right.
Most of the time, it's cut and dry. Boom, boom, boom. It's already done before
Well, you can
it's
feel
even
the
done.
tension even if you're watching it live.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
And
that's what I was about to just say is the meeting's already done in cut and dry before the meeting starts.
Oh yeah.
You know,
So
in defense of the city, I think that there's an awful lot of people in South Haven that are constantly attacking them. And
True. Yeah, very true.
we have a very negative environment going on in South
Yeah,
Haven.
true.
And,
Yeah.
True.
you know, short-term rentals, that group has kind of gotten, they've just really attacked the city. And I think that the city is on their heels.
Yeah.
I don't think that the elected officials are people that don't care about a city. I think they
I
care
believe they do.
greatly.
Yeah.
And I think they want to do the right thing. And I think most of them are tuned into what you want. But we've got to find a way to quit talking over each other and talk to each other. And
Yeah.
And if you don't
I
like
think-
what's being said, not cancel them out and
Yeah.
say, we don't want your opinion
I
here
mean,
in South Haven.
Kate her family has been involved in South Haven for generations. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, I know them. She's not trying to sweep this under the rug.
No. Well, and
She just has a lot of responsibility and voices.
Yeah.
And so do, I think
well, and she has no voice because
it's a terrible job to be in.
It's I would say the worst one in South Haven. Because you are under, and most people think that she is in charge of making policy. She's only to implement what the city council says. This is what we want to do. She has to implement it, and people don't realize that.
and she's got to deal with lawyers and administrators, and you know, it's just it's a very big job.
I
I
would
wish
say
she
yes.
could speak, though. I really wish that she could speak and that she could tell us
Kate
exactly
Kate
what
would
we
speak.
need to do.
And I said, because I saw her one day at Meyer, and I said, I'd love to have you come and talk about that. And she says, I am not going to talk about lifeguards publicly until the city council gives her the mandate of what needs to happen.
Yeah, because city council is what gives her marching orders. She is
Absolutely.
at their beck and call. So if city council wants to push lifeguards, they need to be putting it on the agenda at every single meeting and saying, okay, where are we in this process? It is priority 3. We do need to know where they're going with it. They're being very secretive about it. They're not putting it on the agenda so that way we as the public can understand where they are in the process.
And I'm pretty
and
sure
we want to know.
that I read that at least, I think it was in the paper or an article, that at least our mayor says she's for lifeguards. Wasn't that Amanda?
Yeah,
She ran on that.
Oh, she ran on that.
So
But then she didn't. So at the priority settings meeting where they were learning about SWAT and how they wanted to prioritize everything, they were given numbers on stickers. So it was 1 through 17, and they wanted them to on each SWAT page of their priorities, they wanted them to number them as their priority. So she did not even give a 1 to lifeguards. She didn't put one sticker.
After running on it?
Yeah, not one sticker.
Wow.
And we asked her why.
Politicians.
People have publicly asked her why. She did not. And there's been no response. And we want to know
Get elected
why.
on the issues people are passionate about.
So,
that's a
Because
tough
if you're
one.
passionate about it and you really want the lifeguards and you're running on that in order to get votes, I voted for her because she wanted lifeguards. And I will publicly say that.
I have it on a good authority that there will be another priority workshop on July 8th from noon to 2 at the City Council chambers.
Yes.
So
Good sources.
just for people who don't know too much about city council and anything, because what does the priorities mean, and what is priority 1 and 2?
So priority 1 is housing, and that includes STRs, it includes ADUs, it includes anything to do with housing. And they've delineated all of them into one kind of group because if you look at it, housing, jobs, are always going to be a priority, always, for any municipality. So you're going to always put them as priority 1 and 2. So 1 is housing, 2 is jobs, 3 is lifeguards. And we had to talk to them about some of the city council members. We had to talk to them about, all of the housing needs to be put kind of in the same thing, because if you delineate that out, then you're taking up priorities from other issues that need to be handled,
right?
Like lifeguards.
They've been on this issue, it seems,
for decades,
for way too long.
Way too long. Yeah, well, decades.
I was having plans on, as we do these podcasts, to throw some commercials in the middle, but we're just going. And I'm gonna leave this commercial out, or not put any commercials in this one, because I want to keep talking. But I do want to say, if you enjoy our conversation and like what we're doing, and want to make comments, please go to tabootalkback.com. You can leave comments there. You can check out all the things we're doing. This episode, if you're listening to it anywhere where you podcast, on Podbean, Podchaser, iTunes, whatever it may be, you can go to the website and see a lot of other information, because we're not just going to be doing city politics on this, and this is what I want to do very little, but we're going to pick a couple key issues and we'll talk about those. But a lot of this podcast is going to be about conspiracy theories, mental illness. We're going to do a lot of things. We're going to study the Constitution and how it's written and what was meant by it. And we're also going to have with Mylan Bittenbender, I'm talking to him, I'm going to kind of do a Bible study type thing. We're going to talk about the lack of religion in this world and morals, which I do believe that is certainly part of our decline of our culture. So we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be doing some deep dives into some of the books of the Bible, such as like Revelations and, of course, the beginning of Genesis and all that. And those are going to be fun. So a lot of people think that we're just making this podcast because we're going to bust on people and we're going to call them out. No, we want to have good discourse, yet we want to have fun. And, conspiracy theories are always very fun. The who is the real Paul McCartney? There's a real speculation that he died a long time ago, and the new Paul McCartney was. Then where are we talking about stuff like that? So those are fun. There's and actually typically what I call them is conspirafacts. Most of the time when it's a conspiracy, it's somebody hiding behind something to say it's a conspiracy, and then it becomes later, and we find out later, such as the CIA was involved with JFK's assassination. How many years later?
It wasn't 1 bullet?
50-something years later. So, exactly. But
I thought it was a magic bullet.
Yeah. Are you telling us that Lee Harvey Oswald didn't do it?
I'm kind of thinking, why, when you can get somebody that close to the president, would you shoot him from a half a mile away?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So, yeah, but we're going to be doing a lot of stuff. This isn't a podcast that we're using to bitch about city government. We would like to be able to invite them to have some discourse, because I think, like I said, a lot of things don't come out in those meetings because they're divisive. People are yelling. And if I was sitting up there on top of that stand and you got people yelling, I would close them off.
Oh yeah,
the way people talk and disrespect that they throw out there.
Oh yeah, when I was sitting in the audience for the last city council, there was an audience member that called the mayor some pretty colorful names under their breath, and it's just a little. It's not. This podcast won't be that environment.
Done if you're attacked
it's not helpful.
Yeah.
No, it's not helpful.
Not at all. It's just a bad vibe.
I have to say, I had my moment. I literally had my moment at one of the council meetings where I got up, and as soon as they said public comment, I grabbed that microphone so fast.
I've never seen her run so fast.
She was so passionate, though. You were very passionate.
The transparency thing, it gets under my skin, because you're saying you want transparency, but I really believe that they are doing something behind the scenes that is not transparent to the public about this lifeguard situation. And I just want them to be transparent and open and tell us what they're doing. Yeah. Here's the problem is I think that they're not telling us what they're doing. And this is my own conspiracy theory. Sure. Mm-hmm. Right. Call me one.
We're here for it.
Right. My own conspiracy theory is that they have a plan for this, and it's going to mimic what it used or how it used to be housed, because Annie was part of the school board. She worked closely with what we used to have in place. Sure. And so
a long time ago, though.
But in order to get that done, there is a millage that needs to be passed. And so they're waiting to see if that millage gets passed before they actually tell us what their plan is, because I feel like the millage passing is going to be their end all be all if there's lifeguards or not.
Yeah. Jim, what do you think about that?
Are you talking about the Parks millage?
The Parks and Rec millage.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. No, I think you bring up some great points there. I think that the city council is so consumed with the short-term rental issue that it drowns out a lot of other very important things, and
It is.
it's so confrontational and it's so negative. These people come in and loaded for bear, and they feed on each other's, unhappiness with what's going on. That issue needs to move off of the city council and into the planning commission, and move on with some of the other really important issues like lifeguards. I don't think they disagree with lifeguards.
I don't think they do.
I think that they really do like it, and I think it needs to be set up into a citizens advisory group that they work with and have a representative to, and that the ideas are formulated and brought back.
Have you ever known anybody that just wouldn't ever do anything until they thought that it was their own idea? If you brought it to them, they would not do it. That means no sense. You're stupid. You're an idiot.
Hey, that's
a
man thing I
But
hear.
if it's their idea, then it's worth moving forward with. And I've been through jobs and people like that all the time. That's not going to work. Next thing you know, they're doing it because it's their idea. They turn it into their idea. So I'm almost thinking that might be what it is. They don't want to do what anybody else does because they have their idea. And now this is just my opinion. I know zero. I try to stay my name on and keep myself away from city politics, but circumstances have now drugged me in, and here I am. And that may not be such a good thing for those if you keep things not transparent for us all to see what you're doing in our city. I love this city. I was born and raised here. I love being here. I don't ever want to leave, but I'm seeing things that change my perception just a little bit.
I get tired of the constant bashing. When you go on these the South Haven
both ways.
South Haven chat line and South Haven what's happening, and it's just a constant bashing of the city and the people who are working for the city. There's a lot of really good people working for the city.
I agree.
Well,
a lot of good people, and I know a lot of them in all the different departments, and we got to quit beating up on the city. I think they deserve a little more credit.
But now we have to keep them culpable.
Yep.
And we have to make sure that they are doing the will of the people. Now, if there ever is anything happening backdoor, I see a lot of chatter about that with closed door meetings. And they even said that about this when I put the is that to be a closed door meeting? No, it's going to be a time for we can all come up with maybe some ideas to make South Haven better and to do what that works for all of us, because
and to help people understand what's going on. Now, not to take it and make this about short-term rentals, but we have to think this is a big priority, because if the Overton does become a thing and they don't have this short-term rental stuff figured out, we're going to have Overton full of short-term rentals. So it's very important that the city gets this figured out as soon as possible so we can get housing for people, the workforce people and the low income people.
I grew up on Wilson Street when I was a kid, 1 to 7. It was back in those days where mom said, get out, don't come home for lunch, and then get out again, come home for dinner, and you're done for the day. I had so many kids. It was one of the most wonderful neighborhoods you could possibly ask for. And now when I drive down Wilson, I can tell which houses, just by looking at them, are STRs. And now that's not really our discussion, but that's this town has turned away from totally being a place for locals too. I think it's if you realize the perception is come summertime when it's when the tourists are here, locals don't go downtown. We just stay away. We don't do it. I still like to drive by the beach every day and take a look at it. It reminds me of where I'm at and why I'm here. But then when I'm driving through there, somebody from Illinois will stop right in the middle of the drive to let all their kids out and everybody get their stuff out while everybody behind them is waiting.
Or the famous Illinois flip.
To
park downtown.
I actually. Someone sent me a text about someone who was using a bad name the other day, and in calling someone a word that hasn't been used in a long time, I said, they weren't calling you that, they were calling you FIP. That wasn't what they were calling you. But with all that being said, they are a big part of our town. They're a huge part of our economy. I do believe we could survive without them, but at the same, because we'd have to do something different, become an industrial town and a little, choose different ways, which we chose a long time ago to get away from. But like I said, this is a beautiful town with our tourists. It's a great place to show off. I love showing off the beauty of our West Michigan and South Haven. And they don't take away from it. They certainly add to us. But some attitudes that come over from the other state as they come over here are what we can do without. But with all that being said, we're all trying to get along and do the right things for South Haven. Now, as far as lifeguards go, I mean, what do you think would be one of the biggest things that the city and the advocates for lifeguards can do to get together to make it happen?
The city needs to be a little bit more open to inviting us in and consulting with us. We've offered them a number of experts. I mean, these are people free.
Yes.
For free. USLA has offered to come in and do an expedited training. ISLA offered to do the same thing. We have people that are part of the NDPA that are willing and ready to come here and to do this with us. And it's all free. And they won't even reach out to us and ask us, hey, what's so-and-so's phone number? How do I get a hold of your expert? How do I, can we do a meeting? Can we have a session? They're also, the part that I don't like is about the MML. They won't give us information that MML is telling them about liabilities and insurances. And we need to know that in order to put it into our budget. But I'm a taxpayer. I pay MML's salary because I pay taxes in the city of South Haven. So why am I not privy to what they can tell me about what liabilities and insurances look like for the city of South Haven when I'm building a master plan for you? Why can't I talk to them? And I was told that I absolutely cannot talk to them. It is client attorney privilege or something like that. And I cannot talk to them. I am their client, essentially.
Yeah.
So why not?
And along that lines, there's another big issue that I know I hear a lot of big people talk about. And, like in Jim, you're one. You guys are out in the township. And you'll hear people say, well, you're in the township. What voice do you have for here? Well, we grew up here. We love this place. And I went to school in town all my life. I was a part of that. We've been part of the resources. Now, I do believe, and please quote me or tell me if I'm wrong, Jim, the township pays 25% of the taxes paid in go to South Haven for city services and all that other stuff.
I really don't know that number, but the townships support S.H.A.P.E, the townships support S.H.A.P.E. They support the Water and Sewer Authority. Without the townships, you couldn't have all of these services.
Sure.
So I mean, we're one community. I grew up in the north side.
That's right. I don't. When people say where you're from, I don't say South Haven Township.
Yeah, and
South Haven.
We're all in this together. We all vote on most of the same millages. So there's things that's unique to the city of South Haven, and I get that. But people that have lived here for 3 to 15 years try to tell you shouldn't have a voice because you're not in the city.
In the city limits, which keeps changing, by the way.
Which we all, They annexed a lot of property.
They annexed a lot.
The townships, but the townships are great, and that's where a lot of the growth is going to happen with the affordable housing. So we're one community. We're in this together, and we need to, not attack each other because you live in the townships.
And I asked this because of our money that we're paying for taxes, rent, or whatever we do, property taxes. If a percentage, and let's just say it's 25%, I don't know the exact number. If it is, we have no vote, and if we're paying 25% of those taxes in, then we should at least have a quarter vote. Say 2,000 people vote, only 5, you average it out to 500. There should be some kind of representation with the township because we pay our money to help with the city. It's called taxation without representation. And whether our voice counts as a full voice or our voice only counts as a 25% voice, there should be some voice of the township to what the money is being spent on and what the city is doing.
Because as soon as they develop something, they bring S.H.A.P.E in anyway. And S.H.A.P.E has representation by all the townships, and so it should be, the township should be included in these discussions.
Yeah, no doubt.
This brings me to, I've been off the city council for over 25 years, but it brings me back. I was a first ward, council person, and every time I would advocate for the whole city. And everybody's like, you need to focus on first ward. That's where and I'm like, but who is the city? The city is all of us.
All of us.
It's all of us. We keep talking the city, like it's some entity that's out there. And I'm like, it's all of us.
Yeah.
So
and all around us.
And I've always been really passionate about saying that with my organization, we treat this with kindness, compassion, and collaboration. And we need the community to come together. And it's not just the city of South Haven community. It is South Haven Township. It's all of us that use the lake. Yeah, all of us need to come together and say, we are tired of the drownings. Yeah. We're tired of hearing the sirens. It's always what I hear when I'm talking to people. Yeah. We're tired of hearing the sirens go through town, and all of our hearts sink into our stomachs, and we go, no, not another one. Yeah, right. Oh, no, not another one. When does that stop? You know?
See, what my question too, and not to go on this side of it, but what about the private beaches? I mean, it's the same lake. We can't, hit everything, but I understand where we're trying to protect. Because I mean, I was on the council that voted the lifeguards out,
right?
Because we were under the pretense of the insurance costs and all this stuff now, which has been kind of debunked. I believe is what we were.
Yeah, which is. That I know where the question on that is, if there are lifeguards and there is a drowning, does that now make the city more culpable, and where a $10 million lawsuit will now be a $100 million lawsuit? That's certainly an issue.
It's a fair question.
Yeah. When we were looking at this, we looked at this like we need to find all of the reasons why they got rid of it. And we need to go through and deep dive all of the facts.
Well, right? Yeah, and I don't think that we as the council were fully made aware of all the facts of things.
And what I found, so there's an old head lifeguard that has quite a bit of documentation from when we had the old lifeguard program. I sat for 3 hours with him and his documents, and I went through piece by piece, reading everything. The rhetoric that was in this town then is the same rhetoric that is here now. Nothing has changed.
Oh, we don't get better.
Nothing has changed. But the people that were in office prior to, so we had, what was it, Kevin, what was his name? Kevin.
The city manager. Kevin Anderson.
Anderson, thank you. And then we had Al Vandenberg. And now we have Kate. Yeah. Okay.
Well, we had
Kevin,
Brian.
So between all of those, though, there has been a hand-me-down of this rhetoric, and here's why. Like, they are, it's almost like they are given a playbook of, this is what you say, this is how you say it, and we are not doing lifeguards, so if that topic comes up, this is what you do with it.
Well, I mean,
and it literally is playing out. You can see what the letters to the editor of the South Haven Tribune from way back then, from Al Vandenberg, between Mike Vidmar and Al Vandenberg, you can see that now is the same rhetoric that we're hearing from Kate.
Sure. Mike Vidmar, I haven't heard that name in a while. He was in charge of lifeguards, was he not?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. One of our teachers, or he was a administrator, vice principal, I do believe.
It's kind of not taken lightly on things, because I know this is a very serious issue, but I mean, even as kids, we didn't go to the beach till after 5.
Right.
Till the lifeguards were gone.
Yeah.
I think all of us locals did do that.
And we only went when it would have been a red flag day and the waves were big enough.
Right. You have to play in the waves.
And rode our jet skis. So
we all did it as locals. But if we knew then what we know now about that,
once you know
if you
better,
were educated,
you do better.
If you were educated about it, you would do better about that. And I know that there's been times where I've been playing in the waves and I felt like, oh man, I got to get out. Like there's something pulling me. I got to get out of here.
I grew up at Deer Lake,
and
that was a whole different game back then. I mean, Deer Lake wasn't like the little public access scene that it is today, but that's where I grew up at, and we swam out there every day.
Yeah, I can hear the waves. I'm a mile away from. I can hear them. Let's go.
Yeah, grab your stuff, dude.
You went body surfing.
Yeah, that's what it was all about. Yeah.
And sometimes you call them. You say, "Hey, Big Kahuna, come on!" Like you're waiting for that big wave to get you.
But I mean, we didn't have. I mean, we had ourselves. I mean, we're 10, 11 years old, 12 years old on up. But Mom sent us out. That's where we went. We were 8th mile from the beach. We went to the beach. And
a lot of the stories that I'm hearing from the local people, that when I am talking to them about what I'm doing, that's what they talk about. They talk about going and getting in the big waves and stuff like that, but they all have a story. They all have a story about, oh my God, this one time.
Bouncing their head off the bottom of the lake.
Sand in your nose.
Right?
Whoa. But the one nice thing about that, what I will have to say is, we never went out deeper than our waist, because because that's where they broke. So
Yeah.
the waist, and by the time it took you in a little bit, you were being knee high. So in most of those instances, all you had to do was stand up, put your feet down and stand up. But you feel it, you get bounced around, and next thing you know, now you're waist deep. And you didn't get standing up. Now you're neck deep, and it just gets worse from there.
So has the beach changed over the years, though, with the dredging and stuff like that? Does that affect the way the rip currents
It does,
work?
actually, yeah.
Has it made it worse or better?
You know what? We don't know that yet, and we can't say for sure because it's not factual data. But we do have somebody coming in. His name is Bill Sandberg, and he's coming in order to do. He owns the Rip Rider technology, and it's an AI technology that goes between a boat, like a remote control boat, and a drone. And what it'll do is it's going to map the rip current. So Kate and I both wrote a letter of recommendation for him for the National Science Foundation to get a grant in order to build this technology and bring that to us. So he's going to do September 8th. He is going to be at Holland State Park Beach using that Rip Rider technology in order to map the currents there. And then he's going to come into South Haven after he's done there and do it here for us. And so that was one of my biggest pushes with starting S.H.A.P.E was that I wanted somebody to come in and do a rip current mapping. I want to see where they're hitting the most, so that way we can lock off that beach when we know there's a risk for those rip currents.
And that would
that'll
just
help.
Would that have to have like multiple people on the beach patrolling it, or is that like you know what I mean? How is that
For the
something,
Rip Rider?
Right. Is that something that they have out every day, or is it just like, oh, it's a weird day, let's throw it out there?
No, they're going to do it for a week straight. So they'll go out and they're going to go out from a certain time each day so that they can log those currents.
I see.
Different times of the day.
Yeah.
And then they're going to put all of that data together with AI. And then they're going to tell us where we can predict a rip current.
I'm very interested to see, because of the beach reclamation. That's wonderful. I think getting bigger beaches and getting that sand out there is great. But now what happens is for the first 100 yards from the pier, the water is now hitting the beach 50 yards closer or farther out than if you go 100 yards. It makes a huge turn. And is there going to be anything that has a rip current that it's going to actually be worse because it makes that big turn where, back before the beach reclamation, it was all pretty much one straight line all the way down to the Blue Stairs.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like it hit
definitely
the sandbar and kind of...
Yeah, and if you notice
Yeah.
rip currents will oftentimes form around those sandbars. So it'll be a break in that sandbar where you'll see a rip current forming. And then that break will sometimes close off, and that will stop the rip current from forming. But within a matter of, I just did a Zoom meeting the other day with NOAA and Usage, and they did a tracking study in Holland State Park Beach, and they could actually show that within a matter of 10 to 15 minutes where a rip current forms and then it closes off and then it reforms as a structural current. So
Structural.
Yes.
What's a structural current?
a structural current is a current that forms from a longshore current going into a pier, and then from that pier, it goes straight out.
Okay.
So the structure is actually forming a current.
Oh, it's structure. Okay, so
when
the
the
structure
water's
is about
coming,
extra. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
So
physical
when
structure. I
when the
gotcha.
wind and the waves come in towards that structure then it creates a structural current.
Sure.
So they actually showed within a matter of 10 to 15 minutes though, where it had formed around the sandbars. There were two, and then it turned into a longshore current that then went into a structural current.
Yeah.
Within a matter of 10 to 15 minutes, it's ever changing in that way, and a lifeguard would be able to see that.
Yeah,
When
and-
you're out on the beach, you're not paying attention to that. You're going to see a rip current right in front of you, maybe 5 minutes, and then 10 minutes later, it's going to be down the beach. And how do you're going to sit there and you're not paying attention to that.
And if anybody wants to see the differences between the north side and the south side of the lake, you can get it almost any time, especially if the weather is choppy. Because you go over there, you'll be in the south side beach, and you'll look over at the north side, just on the other side, and it looks like a place that you will drown in about 10 seconds.
And normally is.
And then you come over to the south beach, and it is flat as a piece of as a pancake for about 100 yards, and sometimes it's the south beach that's bad, and then the north beach looks quite calm. Now, and that will lull people to sleep. And then number two, people have drowned in an ankle deep water, and they have drowned on green flag days. They have drowned on great days. Floaties are a big issue to me. I think they're allowed down there, but a lot of times what happens is people have those because they're not good swimmers. They go out and get on them, they kind of float out, and then they fall off, or someone pushes them off or whatever. They don't touch the ground when their feet come down, and they take that first gulp of water, and those floaties are so deadly, or can be.
Will that change once they're lifeguards?
I'm not certain. It all depends on what the city
that was one of the
wants.
factors that, everybody wanted their little life raft things, whatever, that they used, but they couldn't use them when a lifeguard was there.
Yeah. Our old
That
lifeguard
needs to be discussed.
Yeah, it's absolutely one of those things that needs to be discussed.
Because that's going to upset a lot of people, and I think maybe that's part of why that got canceled out too. I don't know, but
Yeah, I've noticed that they don't, on the water treatment facility down there, they don't put the water temperature anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't notice it at all last year. I don't know when they took it away, but that was always something I felt like as I'm cruising the beach, I can see the air temp and the water temp within that moments of driving through, and I've not seen it.
I think that happened within the last year or two for sure.
The one thing I hear quite a bit is who's going to listen to the lifeguards, and how is the lifeguards going to have enough authority to make people leave or to write tickets to people who don't have
Let me answer that
driver's
for
license.
you, Jim, because here's exactly how it worked back in 1989.
People were a little more respectful in 1989.
They were, but all the lifeguards have radios. That is not for them to make the choice of. They call the police and have the police down there and take care of any issues like that. Yeah,
because people just don't.
They'll say screw
they
you.
don't listen.
Screw you. I'm here on vacation. I'm going swimming.
The level of respect today for authority is far different than it was.
Yeah.
I can actually speak on that because I'm down on the beach almost every day talking to people about what I talk to them about with the risks and the flag system, code ordinances, and everything with S.H.A.P.E. When I'm handing them those brochures, I can tell you I have only ever encountered one person that I needed to call the police for.
Good.
Yeah.
One person out of the 2 years that I've been doing this, one person.
I think I'm going to send you down to the beach with Amanda and have her bring a mic, and you can actually do man on the street interviews and ask them questions about people that are actually on the beach.
Yeah.
I think that would be a wonderful thing to share with
We can
our
definitely do that.
residents and the people around here.
And I think it's an example of when you approach people with a friendly smile, a friendly conversation, you
No
can
attacks.
no
Right.
attacks, no, hey, get out of the water. Hey,
As soon as that happens,
come here,
everybody's-
come here. You're not safe
gotta
right
shell,
now.
yeah.
Let's talk. And you explain to them what's going on. I don't see why people would be upset with somebody potentially saving your life.
Yeah, I was actually down on the beach just the other day, and one of the beach enforcement attendants went up to a person and said, "You cannot be in the water right here because this is a no swim zone. You need to get your kid and get out of the water." That's how she said it. I then went behind her and gave these people, I literally scoured my car for brochures because I was waiting on my order to come in. And I had some old ones in my car. So I grabbed them and I ran. I ran so fast to these people because they were right next to the pier in the no swim zone. I could see the one guy was going to get really confrontational with her. So I jumped in and I talked to him, and he had an attitude. But by the end of the conversation, he was thanking me.
Yes.
He was thanking me for that information because they were told in their training for the beach enforcement attendants not to give warnings, just to write the tickets. And they were questioned by the beach enforcement attendants, by two of them, is what I've been told. And they were told, no, just write the ticket. And we want to know, where is that ticket money gone? They wrote $26,000 worth of tickets last year. Where is that money?
That's a fair question.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they're not line itemizing it.
It's a fair question.
And I want to know where that money went. If you're going to write tickets and you're not going to give people warnings and you're just simply writing the tickets and you're gathering money for those tickets, you're not giving them an opportunity to correct their mistake because they didn't know, then where are you putting that money?
Yeah. And it goes a long ways for that, at least from what I thought that the perception is that we don't give tickets to anybody that's visiting because we don't ever want them to not come back. That was my perception, that we don't do that. I know, at least I can say this, during summertime hours when I see a lot of tourists driving around, taking left-hand turns from right-hand lanes and going up,
Right.
I never see them pulled over. Ever.
Who's cruising on the golf carts? Have you seen that? That happens every summer.
I saw a group of,
Fortunate.
probably the oldest kid was 15 the other day, driving with another kid who was probably a little younger, and then three younger ones that were probably 12, 11, and 10 on the back of it, driving around the beach. And I'm like, it's just a recipe for a golf cart accident that will not work out at all for the people in the golf cart.
Yeah, I agree.
I know we kind of talked a little bit, the fishermen that are fishing on the piers, that's becoming quite an issue too, that I think that people should understand that this is happening right now.
Yeah, they're stopping the fishermen from going out on the piers. So in the mornings before the gate is open for the piers to be open, they're going out and trying to ticket the fishermen. Our fishermen are local. They've been doing this for decades, eons. They're family generational, and they understand what they're going out on, and they know when to not.
Yes.
And they're very knowledgeable. They have so much education in water safety. It's unreal.
It's almost like they could tell you already where the currents are going, and when they know the clouds are a certain way, the way it is, they know they're out there every day. And we've gotten away from being out in nature every day, and the people that are behind their phones and in their houses all day, they don't understand.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the beach enforcement attendants, I think that there needs to be something with the city that says, you know, some kind of a clause to allow fishermen out there. If you have your fishing license, you should be able to go out on that pier and fish if it's closed and it's not dangerous conditions. The reason why they're going out there and they're ticketing them is because it's closed before they get out there to open them.
When do they open them?
When they come on at 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock
in the morning, all those fishermen are trying to get out there at 6, 5:30.
Yeah. They're out at 4:30.
I'm not sure who's in charge of the gates, but from the last city council meeting, the police chief was talking about when they're trying to close the parks down. We can't close all the parks at the same time because we have maybe one person going out and closing them, or two people going out and closing them. So it could be just off times too.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, it's open from this time, and that doesn't mean that somebody's going to be there unlocking a gate.
Do they lock it? They don't lock that every night, do they?
Yeah, they do.
I didn't know that.
I thought that they couldn't deny access to the pier.
Because
So
that's a valid point about getting the fishermen should be allowed out there, and you know, government can't save everybody from everything, and there should be enjoyment.
Well, just like with the kiteboarders and the surfers, as long as they're tethered to something that floats their equipment, then they're allowed to be out there on red flag days. So there's an exception there. Why can't they have the same exception for fishermen on the piers?
They could.
And they could. And if you have to show your fishing license in order to be able to, if a beach enforcement attendant approaches you and says, hey, you're not supposed to be out here, and they're fishing, and they have to show them their fishing license in order to say, yes, I can be out here, and that's the exception. Why can't that just be the simplest, easiest fix? Why have a whole discussion, meetings upon meetings, like we're used to? Why can't they just say...
They could take a PFD with them.
The people out there windsurfing, it seems like that's way more dangerous. They're way further out, and the people on the pier are actually protected by the pier and on a solid object.
I watch them jump off that pier in the 6-8 foot waves.
I shot a music video the other day, a couple years ago, and at the end of it, I said, "The hell with it! I'd never jumped off this pier, and I'm going to do it," and I did it. The water is way too shallow, but I did it anyways.
Go to Grand Haven; they let you do it.
They do, yes,
they do.
We put in rocks to hurt people.
Yeah.
So where do you guys
really
think?
Shouldn't, but
where do you think we go from here to try to?
What's the next
try to make some progress, try to gain some traction.
Yeah.
We need the city to be a little bit more inclusive with our experts. So if we can do that and we can formulate a really great relationship with the city, we can help them. We can help them build this lifeguard program. I've already started it and given it to them for free.
Yeah.
You know, put out an RFD, try to put in some kind of a quote system, have entities come in and quote it for them and say, we'll come in and do this for you. And
there are a lot of people
will
help them if they just let them.
So I guess,
and they're not letting them.
Everyone in this community wants to help. Like, I've seen multiple posts on multiple of these chat lines of citizens. What can we do? What can we do? So when is the next city council meeting and stuff like that, where maybe a citizen can come and let their voice be heard?
The city council meetings are every other Monday at 7 p.m. at City Hall. So they can come in and they can make their comments. As long as if lifeguards are on the agenda, you're going to want to get up during public comment of items on the agenda, and that will be more towards the beginning of the meeting. If it is not on the agenda and you still want to be heard, then you'll have to wait until the end of the meeting. So come in about 9 o'clock and you'll be able to get up for public comment for items not on the agenda. And you can talk about anything during that that period of time as long as it's not on the agenda. So if you're into STRs, it's not on the agenda, stand up and speak.
Yeah.
It takes, you only get 5 minutes. So if you do come in and you talk, make sure that you're within that 5 minutes.
You only get 5 minutes unless you're on something that they are okay with and they let you extend a little bit.
A little bit sometimes.
Write your thoughts down, read them out loud, and time them so you know that you can get through all of what you're doing when you get to them. Now, does anybody have any other questions? Because I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, and I think there's a lot more discussion to have about this. And I think maybe what I might try to do is see if I can't find a few of my friends that were lifeguards back in high school and get them in here to talk about some of those experiences also.
I know a few that might be interested.
Yeah, I think that would be a pretty cool discussion to talk about what their powers were. Like I said, from what I remember, that if when they whistle a blow, get out of the water, you can't be in it, and they don't listen, first thing they do is they call dispatch and say, we've got some people not listening in the water when they're not supposed to. Cops are down there removing them. And that's the power that they have. Those people should not have to confront anybody in that way. It's a command. Get out of the water. We really need you out. It's not safe. And if you don't listen, well, you've not that was your warning.
Yeah. Then one more thing on the budget and how our budgets differed. They want this astronomical top of the line radio system that is just ridiculously over the top. I talked to dispatch. I actually talked to the director of the dispatch, Van Buren County Dispatch, and he told me the most effective way to call in any kind of water emergency is to use a cell phone, because even when you go into SOS mode and it's so crowded and you don't have service, you can still call 911.
Yeah.
You do not need this crazy expensive radio system in order to channel your lifeguards on one channel and create a channel for them and then have dispatch watching that channel. They have over 50 channels on their screen at one time. They're not monitoring all of those channels. If they see chatter, they'll turn it on for a brief minute to make sure nothing's wrong, but then they turn it off. And we want them to have that first immediate response. And in order to do that, you call 911. Yeah. And so if
would that be a lifeguard calling 911?
Yeah. So in the morning, they would have an analog radio that they would then have or like a walkie-talkie to talk back and forth between the lifeguards. Right. Hey, I'm on North Beach. Sam, can you come over to South Beach? I've got a swimmer that looks kind of funky. I want a second eyes on this. Right. You're doing that on a radio. You're not doing that over a cell phone. But if you're calling 911, you don't have to have this crazy astronomical radio dispatching system and be part of their dispatch unit. You just need to call 911 from a cell phone. So in the morning, they would come in, they would check out their radio, they would check out their cell phone, and they would go to their tower, they would do their morning checks, all of that stuff. And dispatch, that was recommended by dispatch. And I felt like I was laughed at when I suggested that in City Council when I presented the lifeguard presentation. Yeah.
So the radio system that you talked about, does that record everything that you guys say over the radio?
No.
So like a cell phone calling 911, that would record it.
It would record it.
You would think that they would want that for liability purposes, like timestamp, this is when we called, blah, blah, blah. This is what's
And they
happened.
would. When I talked to dispatch said that all of that information would be recorded in its own file for the city of South Haven.
And that's
so that
good
way
for
we
them
can
for
keep
statistics
track.
and knowing, hey, this is how many things we saw.
Yeah, and it's not on a scanner. It's not on a scanner where everybody can hear. So that's what they wanted, is to delineate their own channel so that way they can turn that off so people can't hear what's actually going on. Yeah. Well, you have that same privacy when you're calling 911.
Sure.
So
interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say this. We've been going for an hour and 20 minutes or so, and we have certainly covered a lot of subjects, but I want to make sure those that are listening, if you like what we're doing and want us to keep doing it, please like, share, and subscribe, especially subscribe to what we're doing. It's free. Anywhere that you podcast, there's a little purple icon on your phone, and if you put all the things they don't want you to talk about, it will pop right up, and you can follow it, you can subscribe. We would certainly like you to do that and download our episodes, because then we really see that what you're doing. You can listen to them and stream them. I do get kind of numbers on that to see who's doing it for unique listeners, but we always like to have subscribers. Then you'll be able to turn on your notifications, and every time we put out a podcast, you'll get a notification. You can touch the notification. You can listen or not, but you at least know that it's there. So I certainly believe this warrants a lot more conversation. We'll see if we can't someday get someone from the city in here. We just want, and not to that we're going to make any policy here, because that's not what we're doing. What we want to do is maybe find some ideas that work for everybody, and we can all come together and figure it out. Because I would have to say that probably the majority of people around certainly agree that an extra level of safety on our beaches is warranted, and that's not a bad thing. We just got to figure out how we're going to pay for it. Can you expect the citizens of South Haven to pay for it? No, you can't. Maybe there is something that comes along as a millage or something later that puts it in and has some money for that. But what we have to do is, I think there's a grassroots campaign to start putting money from people that are really passionate about it and think that have money, maybe to put it into a little bit into the coffer, get something building up, and make some money off of that money, and then eventually it can all happen. There's lots of little ways that we can do things, at least to get a start. And I'm certainly like let's start small and build this program. A little safety is better than no safety.
Absolutely.
And then after 2-3 years, we're into a full program with the $700,000 that the city thinks it is, and it's supported by the city. It's supported by parking. It's supported by a small excise tax that if you come into South Haven, you pay an extra %. Who knows? There are a lot of different ways that it can happen.
Yep.
And before we go, I want to make sure that I give the floor to Jim. Is there anything that you would like to ask or know before we conclude this podcast?
No, I think it's been a very helpful discussion, and I think enough ideas were brought up today that we can build on.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think a lot of people will hear this, and then maybe they will start sending letters in and say, hey, these guys talked about this. What a great podcast. They talked about stuff nobody else is talking about, and now we would like to know a little bit more on how we're going to be safer. Amanda?
I'm just so appreciative that you guys came in today. I'm very excited for things to come. And yeah, this is all just conversations. I really hope that everyone enjoyed this podcast and the more that we're going to have coming. And just thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
And I thank Amanda for producing this podcast and getting all the people together to come in and talk. Said maybe someday we'll be able to get a representative from the city for them to be able to be part of it also. They're always welcome. Mayor Annie Brown, you are always welcome. I will continue to put public invitations to you when we're talking about local politics, and we'd love to have you, and hopefully that this is not a bash session. We don't always agree with a lot of things, but we want to respectfully talk to each other about how we can make South Haven better for everybody, and that includes our tourists. Scott T., do you have anything last comments?
I can agree with what you just said. I mean, we're all in this together. We're all the city. We're all...
we all love this city.
It's our family.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean,
we do.
We have many families in this community that are family because of this community.
Yes.
That we're closer than we all think.
We want to keep them safe, and we want to keep our visitors safe. Yes, absolutely. So, with all that being said, this is all the things they don't want you to talk about. Please like, share, and become a member of our podcast by subscribing, and we'll talk to you next time. All the Things They Don't Want You to Talk About podcast is part of the Rob Byrd Moondog Podcast Network. Go to tabootalkback.com for more information. Copyright 2024.